All right, we are in the last lesson of this unit. We're going to be talking about depreciation. This is lesson 3.5, so let's get started. The first thing you need to know about depreciation is that it is only calculated yearly. We don't calculate it quarterly like compound interest or monthly or anything like that. It's only per year. So let's talk about a specific case first. I have a $500 piece of equipment that depreciates at a rate of 6% per year for 3 years. Well, if I want to know how much it will be worth after 1 year, I will take the $500 and multiply it by 94%. And the reason it's 94% is because I take 100% of its value originally and subtract off the 6% depreciation rate, and that leaves me with 94%. So I want to know what 94% of the original value is, because that's what it's worth now after 1 year. So I'm going to repeat that process in moving from the end of the first year to the end of the second year by multiplying by 94% again. And then after the third year, multiply by 94% again. So you'll notice that there is a pattern here. Let's look at what happens in the general case. First, let's say that it's about $415.29. That's how much this piece of equipment is worth after 3 years. So let's talk general case like we did with interest. I've got a value of P depreciating for T years at a rate of R, and we're going to use a decimal for that, not a percent. So I know that after 1 year it's going to be worth P times 1 minus R. Remember, I'm subtracting that interest rate from 100% for the number 1, and I'm using it as a decimal. After 2 years I've got to multiply by 1 minus R again. And after 3 years, I've got to multiply by 1 minus R again. So if you look at the number of years of depreciation and the exponent in this equation, they are identical. So I know that after T years, it's going to be worth P times 1 minus R raised to the T. Okay, very important formula to remember. So let's look at some examples using that formula. If I have a $35,000 car that depreciates at 5% per year, I want to know what it will be worth in 10 years. So I take the $35,000 and I multiply it by 95%, because that's 100%, the original worth, minus the 5% that it depreciated over the year, and I raise that to the 10. And I get about $20,955.79. Notice that I raised the 0.95 to the 10 first before multiplying by 35,000. That's order of operations. The second example is I have a $90,000 piece of equipment. It depreciates at 7% per year, and I want to know what it will be worth in 15 years. So I take 90,000 and I multiply it by 93% to the 15, and that gives me $30,303.08. All right. The only other kind of question I can ask you is finding the rate of depreciation. If I know what it was originally worth and I know what it's worth now, and I know how many years it's been depreciating, I can figure out the rate of depreciation. So let's do an example of that. I have a machine that's purchased for $30,000, and 3 years later it's sold for $19,080. So I want to know what the annual rate of depreciation was. So there's my equation that I've always used. The amount now, that's the $19,080. The P, the principal value, is $30,000. The T, the time, is 3 years, and R is what I'm trying to figure out. So I'll plug all of that stuff in, and that's what my equation will look like. Okay, and so now I have to solve for R. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to divide by the 30,000 on both sides. That will get rid of it on the right-hand side, and that gives me 0.636 equals 1 minus R to the third. Remember, I'm solving for R, so I need to get rid of that cube sign, that exponent of 3. So that means I need to cube root both sides. That gets me 0.86 equals 1 minus R. And then one more step, and that gets me that R equals 0.14, and that means that the annual rate of depreciation is 14%. So those are the types of questions that I can ask you regarding depreciation. If you have any questions for me, please let me know, and I will see you tomorrow.